And a good Thursday evening, folks. Here we are on 13 News Now Plus. Welcome to Hurricane Hub Live. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis. And tonight on HHL, we've got a jam-packed show for you. A lot to talk about. Not a whole lot of activity currently in the basin, but odds are, of course, climatology favors this. As we get a little deeper into the season, we'll see the activity really turn on. It's almost like flipping a switch. A lot of times when we get to August, activity just starts to erupt. But right now, tropical squalls in the northwestern Gulf has a low chance of developing at all. 10% chance. This is what we've been watching for the past couple of days. Very similar track scenario to what we saw play out with 94L last week in the northern Gulf. Of course, that never did develop, never did get our next name, Dexter. But models, long-range models, are starting to sniff out the potential here of some possibility or an opportunity for development with a robust wave robust tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa. We call those African easterly waves. And as it hits the far eastern Atlantic, the main development region out there, some of the models do start to develop it and track it farther west through the deep tropics and then head up into the Caribbean area. So we'll have to watch how that plays out. Long time to watch it, but we'll see. All right, in the Eastern Pacific, we'll also touch on there. We've got another wave that's now moderate chances of developing. Next name on the list out in the East Pac is Gil. All right, in the Atlantic Basin, in terms of climatology, we're about to wrap up July and head into August. And usually, according to climatology, we start to see a big jump. At least a jump from where we've been to some activity. Then, of course, middle of the month, a bigger jump. And then we get closer to the peak of the season there. So climatology does favor increased activity as we go day by day deeper into the season. Next name on our list for 2025 is Dexter. And we talked about this when 94L was flirting with getting that name. Dexter's replacement for, in 2019, Dorian. That was retired after, of course, causing a ton of damage in the Bahamas and in the Caribbean. So Dexter as a replacement there has never been used. This will be the first year of it being used. All right, when do we typically get around to seeing our fourth named storm? Once again, consulting climatology based on the last 30 hurricane seasons. Usually it's right around August the 15th. Okay, based on 30 seasons. Let's go back more recently, the last 6 hurricane seasons, and when we had our fourth named storm. And that was August the 3rd last year. And you can see here, wide range goes from June to September to August to July. So when you average these all out, the average date of the last 6 seasons is July the 26th, pretty close to where we are currently, right? Odds are we won't see that next name coming our way in the next 7 days. What's going on in the northern Gulf is not going to get a name, only 10% chance of that. So we are kind of probably running a little bit behind schedule, I guess you could say, based on the last 6 hurricane seasons and the average date being July the 26th. See what happens here. Out in the basin right now, pretty quiet, pretty benign. Still pretty much a lot of dust out there causing dry mid-levels of the atmosphere, not much development. But we're all watching this one area of interest, the only one in the entirety of the basin that the Hurricane Center is watching, and has a 10% chance. You can see just a broad area of low pressure here. Disorganized, some squalls moving through southern Louisiana, making their way into eastern parts of Texas. And eventually we could see a more broad area kind of move on inland near Corpus Christi, bringing some rain showers there. That's about it. 10% odds of this acquiring enough organization to get a name. So it's not zero, but it's also not particularly high. Elsewhere in the basin, as I mentioned, the Saharan dust concentrations not as high. When you see the darker browns there, the rust colors, those are higher concentrations of some Saharan dust. So it's looking like the concentration not as high as we get a little bit farther out off to the west. Now we're going to have to focus on what's emerging off the coast of Africa, African easterly waves here. You can see several of them kind of lined up in sequence there, heading to the west. They hit the coast near the Cabo Verde Islands, and then they tend to, if conditions are overall favorable, start to organize a little bit more as they now have their fuel source, which can be the warm ocean waters. And as we talked about in the last couple of videos, the main development region, the Atlantic in general, has seen a pronounced warming trend just over the last couple of weeks. So odds are becoming a little more likely for a more favorable Atlantic. So what do we have in play right now? Yesterday we went over the Madden-Julian oscillation. I'll go back over that if you're just joining us tonight for the first time. We've got an enhanced or a favorable phase of the MJO building into the Atlantic. That'll also help to bring about lower wind shear. And embedded within all that, this is a new acronym we're going to go into, a convectively coupled Kelvin wave is inbound. Usually when that coincides with a favorable phase of the MJO, we see larger scale lift and lifting motion is what we need to initiate tropical development. So a refresher here on what the MJO is, the Madden-Julian oscillation that comes in two phases. It circumnavigates the globe. It takes about 60 to 90 days to complete a complete phase. The enhanced or the suppressed phases. For a while, for most of the hurricane season, we've been dealing with a suppressed phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation. But when it does transition, which it's going to be doing in the next couple weeks, the enhanced phase can create conditions that are more favorable for storms. Right here is the big one, reduction in wind shear out in the Atlantic basin. So here's the forecast for the Madden-Julian oscillation. Right now, it's in a suppressed phase, set up in pretty much areas over the Indian Ocean. But we're seeing it kind of almost completely reverse course and set up in a more favorable sector here in the Western Hemisphere and the Atlantic, meaning more wide-scale, larger-scale rising motion in the next couple of weeks, pretty much coinciding with when we enter the first week of August. So let's talk about the convectively coupled Kelvin wave. This aids in enhancing larger-scale lift, and as I mentioned, as it does coincide with the arrival of a favorable phase of the MJO, those two can act in unison and kind of help to enhance some tropical activity. So let's see what the models are starting to sniff out here. And what we're looking at is the European model's rendition of relative vorticity, spin in the atmosphere. More so, we're looking at positive vorticity. So it's going to be clockwise rotation, clockwise circulation that indicates a developing area of low pressure. So when we're looking for areas like this, that's just a broad spin counterclockwise, or excuse me, clockwise, that's indicating a developing area of low pressure. Look what happens as we get into the last couple days of July and into early August. Models start to show a real big tightening area of developing area of low pressure that pretty much comes off the coast of Africa, moves across the MDR, and then starts to move to the north and west, taking a track that, if this was to play out, we're talking about 9-10 days out from now, that could be something to watch for the southeastern U.S. Of course, it could make it into the Gulf. It could go into the Caribbean, could go anywhere at this point in time. Small changes or small tweaks in the forecast can have an exponential outcome on its overall solution here. So that's just something that the models are sniffing out. This is going to be our first real main development region area of interest as we go through the next couple days. Not even tagged yet from the National Hurricane Center. That probably won't come until we get within that 7-day time frame, which will be about 2-3 days from now. So watch for this weekend. They may start to tag an area in the main development region and eventually give it an invest, which would be the next up would be 95L. All right, out in the Eastern Pacific now, we're watching for some clusters here of disorganized activity, but these are not what they're looking at as their area of interest. You have to go way to the west here due to the south and southeast of Honolulu and Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands. Got a 40% chance of this developing here in the, I guess it's going to be heading into the Central Pacific, really, in the next couple days. That next name on the list in the East Pac is Gil, coming after two major hurricanes. And it's been a quiet period the last 2 weeks pretty much in the basin. Eric was a Cat 4, did make landfall in Mexico, and then Flossie came in a couple days behind it. That made it all the way up to Cat 3, but stayed offshore. So Gil would be up next. Odds are won't be affecting anybody, but it will be the seventh name so far in the East Pac. Been quite active out there so far this season. All right, let's get to the tropical trivia from yesterday. I asked you, we've been naming storms in the Atlantic basin since the 1950s. What was the first name given to a hurricane? Was it Allison, Arnold, Abel, or Angela? Well, that first name was given to a Category 3 major hurricane in 1950, in August of 1950, and it was Abel. And that moved and stayed off the eastern seaboard, did bring about a lot of surf along the entire East Coast, but thankfully did not make landfall in 1950. First name was a major hurricane. That's fitting there. Headed off into Nova Scotia, and as it moved into an extratropical environment. All right, here's today's trivia question. What season saw the most names retired? Was it the season of 1955? Very active season that year. 1995? 2005, or was it more recently in 2020? I'll have the answer for you tomorrow at 8 p.m. on HHL. But in the meantime, go ahead and scan that QR code to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It is information on supplies you should have on hand if a storm's coming your way, emergency numbers you might need, and a whole lot more. And just a reminder, we are here Monday through Friday every weekday at 8 p.m. for a brand new episode of Hurricane Hub Live. We'll see you back here to wrap it up this week on Friday, tomorrow at 8.